2 weeks ago, I signed an executive order banning men from playing in women's sports. Many Democrats are fighting me on that. The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Here's part of what she had to say when asked about the state's laws when it comes to transgender students in sports.
The legislative policy has been enacted. If they wish to change it, they have the authority to change it. But you don't change it by executive order or by wishing it differently.
Transgender athletes are allowed to compete in female sports in Maine under the state's Human Rights Act.
Maine's governor says that she's protecting trans kids. But what if I told you this whole thing might be less about the athletes and more about the money? Because when you follow the money trail, you start to realize this ain't just about inclusion. It might be about profit, power, and a family healthcare connection hiding in plain sight. So let me ask you, is Governor Janet Mills fighting for trans rights? Or is she fighting to keep a check flowing to her inner circle? Let's get into it. Governor Janet Mills has made national headlines for her support of trans youth, especially when it comes to school sports. She painted herself as the wall standing between the vulnerable kids and the big bad GOP machine. But the story gets real complicated when you learn that her sister is an executive at Maine Health, the same organization pushing gender-affirming care. Add to that big campaign donations, nonprofit money, and millions from trans advocacy organizations flooding into Maine politics. Suddenly, this doesn't feel like a simple fight for fairness. It feels like a playbook, and the stakes are very massive. This isn't just about school sports, it's about statewide credibility and public trust. If Mills is funding support into a healthcare system tied to her family while using civil rights rhetoric as cover, she's rewriting the rules of public service into a personal business model. That undermines not only the legitimacy of trans advocacy, but also the trust people place in their elected officials. It tells voters that personal connections matter more than transparency. If this becomes a new political blueprint, then every so-called progressive initiative risks becoming a veiled cash grab. This is the kind of erosion that doesn't just hurt policy, but it poisons democracy. It kind of shows how it always is. Politicians get kickbacks. Politicians are led by who has the money, who's going to supply them enough resources so they can continue to have the power. So is it really about the people or is it really about the money? And honestly, that kind of shady setup, it reminds me of what's going on in healthcare right now, with seniors getting taken advantage of left and right. Some of the biggest Medicare companies in the country are literally under DOJ investigation for pushing senior citizens into bad plans, just to line their pockets with kickbacks. That's why I partner with Chapter. They're not out playing games. Chapter looks at every single Medicare plan available, over 24,000 of them. So your parents, your grandparents, or even you can get real help, not a sales pitch. I'm turning 41 this year. My parents are already dealing with this, and it's confusing by design. That's why having someone honest with no strings attached matters. You'll talk to a real person. It's completely free. And folks who have worked with Chapter have saved over $1,100 a year on average. So take a moment to write this number down, 262-454-0419. That is 262-454-0419. Especially with everything going on, don't get taken advantage of by these Medicare middlemen. Call Chapter and protect yourself. Now let's get into it. So let's break it down. Governor Mills publicly clashed with Donald Trump over transgender athlete policies. Trump pushed a national executive order restricting transgender girls from participating in women's sports. His argument, competitive fairness and protecting Title IX. Mills called his policy hateful and dangerous. She promised Maine will be a safe state for trans youth and passed protections allowing students to compete based on gender identity.
Maine Governor Janet Mills blasted President Trump today in her first major interview since the start of her legal battles with the Trump administration over transgender athletes in Maine. She didn't hold back, saying even a fifth grade civics student knows the president can't create laws through executive action.
They decided to shut off funding for our school nutrition program, the school lunch program entirely. The law says if you don't like what a state or entity is doing over here, you can't take their funds away over here.
Shout out to the Daily Wire and the Washington Stand for uncovering many of these financial and political connections that raise a lot of eyebrows. Without their reporting, this part of the story might have stayed in the shadows. So this whole thing looks noble on the surface, but While she's doing that, Maine Health, where her sister Dora Mills works, was ramping up gender-affirming care. Dora is no intern. She is the Chief Health Improvement Officer. Her department benefits with more patients use the services. More patients, more money. Maine Health was a major donator to Janet Mills' campaign. And during that 2022 election, trans advocacy groups dropped $2.5 million in the state. So you ask yourself, is this political courage or political investment? When you have family at the top of the medical pyramid and policies that drive money into the system, you have to wonder where the real priorities lie. And wait, it gets even more spicier. So while Mills was flexing against Trump and fighting for trans inclusion, this is where conservative lawmakers started digging, and they found some receipts. State Rep Laurel Libby got censured for exposing a trans athlete in a school controversy. And it got to a point where the U.S. Supreme Court had to step in, temporarily restoring Liberty's legislative powers after the Maine House stripped them.
When the Democrat-controlled Maine House of Representatives voted to censure Republican Laurel Libby of Auburn earlier this year, she was told that if she apologized for what she did, she would once again be allowed to participate in debates and votes in the chamber. She didn't. Instead, she sued. And today, the U.S. Supreme Court said while that lawsuit is in the courts, that censure should be put on hold.
Meanwhile, watchdog groups started asking the same questions. Why is Maine's health revenue growing in sync with the new trans-related policy? Why is the governor pushing youth transitions policies so hard even when the public debate is still wide open? That's when things shifted from controversial to suspect. The final chapter in this situation between Maine and Trump came to a head in late 2024. Trump doubled down on his plan to strip federal funding from schools that allow transgender athletes to participate and compete in girls' sports. That threat wasn't just rhetoric. It was backed by a proposed executive action, and the Department of Education under Trump was gearing up to enforce it. Maine, under Mills' leadership, tried to stay defiant. The state filed legal challenges and joined with other progressive states to form a coalition against the executive order. Mills gave passionate speeches, appeared on national media outlets, and framed herself as the last line of defense for civil rights in education. And while that may have earned some applause from some activists, legal scholars warned that the fight will cost Maine millions of dollars in federal education funding. School districts were stuck in the middle, unsure if they should follow federal law or the governor's political crusade. Parents were left confused, and the students were caught in a policy limbo. All the while, the healthcare networks and the political machines supporting Mills kept growing. Maine wasn't just defying Trump out of principle. It was doubling down on a high-stakes gamble with kids, courts, and a lot of cash on the line. So here it is. You have a governor who says she's out for this for justice, but the deeper you go, the more it looks like just business. Think about it. Her sister runs a healthcare system. That system profits from trans healthcare. That system donates to her campaign. And she passes law that sends more patients into that system. Now, if a Republican did this with oil money or prison contracts, a lot of people would be marching out in the streets really upset. But Mills wraps it in rainbow flags and social justice buzzwords, and she gets a lot of applause. And that's the magic trick in politics. Use a real issue to hide a dirty agenda. So again, shout out to the Daily Wire and Washington Stand for running this expose. But it's not just them. Local people in Maine are asking, why is Maine Health involved in politics? Why a private healthcare organization is influencing policy about public school kids? It's not just a bad look. It just starts a really bad pattern. Because whether you agree or disagree with trans athlete policies, we should all agree on one thing. The government should not be using children as political pawns or as revenue streams. Let's not pretend it's all about helping people because the receipts say otherwise. But here's my take on the whole trans situation. If you're an adult and you want to transition, that's your business. I'm not going to stop you. Do you? If that makes you happy, go ahead. You're an adult. You have your own agency. You are able to make your own decisions. Just as long as you're not hurting anybody else, go do what you got to do. But when it comes to kids, it's a whole different game. Children should not be making life-altering decisions before their brains are even fully developed. And politicians definitely shouldn't be getting rich or scoring campaign wins, pushing kids into controversial medical decisions. So you have to ask yourself, does Janet Mills care about these children, or she's playing Monopoly with real lives and fake morals? Because from what I'm looking at, in the terms of her connection to these healthcare organizations, it doesn't seem like it's really about the trans athletes. It's about power, it's about money, and it's about time some people start calling it out for what it is. So let me know what you guys think about in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe if you want more corruption breakdowns, and check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel. Also check out my email newsletter so you can keep track on what's going on with the channel. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.